So hello and welcome to this week's Mentor Series session. So this week's topic is event marketing, and I think it's, having spoken to a few different people about it, it's one of those subjects that people don't always often relate to as an event role. However, it's so important within so many events as well. And I think no matter what industry you're working in within events, or what events it is you're doing or your role within that, having a background knowledge of events marketing can really help, as it often ties a lots of different parts of an event together. So with that, we have Caitlin, who's a digital producer at a global experience marketing agency, George P. Johnson, and she's also the co-founder of Event First Steps as well. Caitlin, do you want to just introduce yourself and give us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Caitlin, and as Katie said, I work as a digital producer, which is just, it's quite, the title is just a job title, because really what it stems down to is I look after the social media and marketing campaigns that we produce for the clients that I work with at George P. Johnson. So just in case you thought, what's a digital producer? I can't really tell you because I don't think it applies in loads of other companies. I think everyone uses different terminologies for stuff. But where I work at GPJ, we are a global experience marketing agency, producing a range of different types of events for clients. And in the UK, a lot of our clients tend to be tech clients. So we work with Cisco, IBM, we do stuff with automotive. I'm trying to think who else we've worked with. I mean, we've done stuff with McLaren and places, Google, and types of events vary as well, from being conferences to digital activations and a variety of things. And as I said, I look after specifically the marketing for our clients around their events. And we'll probably kind of touch upon a little bit of what that kind of involves and what I do with that, but it differs and depends based on the clients that I'm working with. And then also alongside working at GPJ, I also am the co-founder of an industry initiative called Event First Steps, which looks to help those starting out in the industry, like you guys, taking your first steps, be that if you're at uni or if you're doing a career change later on. So yeah, I think that's a bit about me.
Brilliant. No, absolutely. I think sometimes with events where you do so many different roles and work on so many different things, it's really hard to say. And yeah, titles, again, mine's the longest title. I'm an event manager, just call me that, it's fine.
What job title do you have, Katie?
Senior Global Summit Creator. It's necessary. So what we'll do, we'll go straight into the questions that we've asked kind of all of our speakers so far and get an idea for that. And then, yeah, go into the questions from everybody involved as well. So what made you join the events industry? Was there anything specific, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I studied event management at uni. So when I was 18 and I was deciding what I was going to do with my future, I realised I was not very good at any of the things I'd studied at A-levels. So I did drama, photography and politics, which has no, I did it because I enjoyed it. I had obviously no clear direction. And I went to, in my final year, I went to a politics conference. I think they would do it for anyone who was studying politics at A-levels, that was in London, and it had a whole bunch of speakers who were politicians. And I spent the whole time there going, I just distinctly remember being like, how did they get all these people in this one room for this event for us when they're meant to be running the country? Was kind of my thought process. Like, this is bizarre. And because of that, I then looked into event management. I think someone may have said, oh, there's a course that you can do around this. And so, yeah, I went to uni, studied event management, and I went to the University of Gloucestershire, which was fine. It was a nice space. I wouldn't say it was the best university course. However, I got a lot of hands-on experience because Cheltenham, where the uni is based, is where they do the Cheltenham Literary Festival, the Science Festival, they just have a lot of festivals, which is great because you can then get the hands-on experience. And it was doing work experience that I learned that I was really quite terrible at logistics, which is not great when you study a course that, you know, is kind of geared towards logistics. And for my placement year, I worked for an Indian catering company doing weddings. And learned there as well that I really wasn't very good at logistics. And actually, I knew I didn't want to do weddings. And I thought, okay, well, what's the options? What else is out there? And I think courses have changed dramatically now. And I think it's great being able to talk to people who work in the industry. But I went back to my final year and I didn't really get any direction on what was available and what was out there. But I was very lucky to basically meet some people who worked for the company I now work at GPJ. So I graduated in 2014 and I have now worked at GPJ for over 6 years. But I joined the agency for 2 weeks work just doing admin in the sales and marketing team, which was literally just coming in to copy and paste things from a spreadsheet into another new spreadsheet they were using. And then I managed to stay there for 6 years. But in that time, I started in sales and marketing and they moved me across to strategy and planning, which was a department that I didn't know anything about. But I was able to kind of work in there because I had quite a lot of, well, I suppose the stuff I'd done for my dissertation and research sets you know, it's great skills to have to work in strategy. So I worked in that department. I then got moved across to the digital department they set up where the team were working on things like virtual reality experiences. And this is, I mean, we're looking at probably at this point about 2016. I'd say that I was kind of in that department. So it's still quite new tech, artificial intelligence, great fun. I wasn't very good at it, but it was a great environment to be in. But what also came about when the digital team was set up is that there was a need to have people working on social media for a particular client that I work with. And the reason I was able to do that was because I spent a huge amount of time on Twitter and Instagram. And that's legit. I didn't apply for this role. I never trained or had ever thought I wanted to get into marketing. I just happened to be a young-ish person who used social media outside work, and they were like, well, here's an opportunity. And I have kind of stayed there. That's a very long-winded thing. I've just actually given you a whole career. I don't know if that was interesting, but yeah, that's how I started and where I've stayed.
No, absolutely. I think we kind of have very similar paths along the way there in terms of like college courses and then, how it ends up. But no, absolutely. I think having asked that question, a lot of people kind of either had events dead set in mind, they knew exactly what they wanted to do, or were completely the other way and just fell into it. So I think you go either or. And it's nice to hear kind of how people get to where they've ended up. So I guess that kind of goes into the next question as well of where has your path taken you so far? So you covered kind of different roles there, but was there anything kind of else included in that you wanted to cover?
No, I mean, I think what I have found really interesting from my own journey into it is that actually none of it, I never sat down and was like, that's the job I want to do, or that's the client I want to work for. I've been lucky that there's always been support around me, but also people recognizing certain skill sets. And I think the reason I always say about how it's not like I wasn't very good at social media. It wasn't like I don't know, I wasn't an influencer, I wasn't doing anything. I was just a person who used it. And the reason why I think that's quite important is because the skills that everyone is gaining or has already started using, sometimes you're thinking that's everyone must have these skills. And actually the biggest thing I learned is that no, most people at work, or at least where I was at the time, they don't use social media, or they're not really that kind of interested in what happens online. And I also think it was one of the weirdest parts of it for me is I'm just very interested in stuff. So working in the digital team was great because I just was fascinated, and still am, about how people use kind of virtual reality, augmented reality. I can't code anything. I'm not looking to do that, but I just have this real interest. And because I kind of ask those questions in the office and always do and continue to do it, I think that helps in where they were able to go, well, she's interested, like she's willing to kind of be part of it. And that's where those opportunities came in. It wasn't, you know, I didn't apply for anything, and there was never any internal kind of promotions or job interviews around it. It was just that I like to talk, and some people they kind of pick up on that. And then there's often opportunities that come around, and I think it's quite hard. I think the events industry, a lot of the time, that's how people kind of do find their way a bit, is when something comes up, people are like, oh, actually, I was talking to Katie and I remember her being really interested in something. She might be interested in this opportunity. And so, I don't know really where I was going with that.
I know, completely agree. I think in terms of the events industry as a whole, kind of whatever your role are, there's so many kind of transferable skills that come into it that people don't necessarily realize. Like you say, just having an interest in some things can then relate to something kind of quite important in an actual business setting as well. But yeah, I completely agree. Like, especially in events, like the networking aspect of it all, a lot of it is just kind of word of mouth and different things like that, whether that's industry as a whole, network as a whole, or just within your company if you're working for those companies too. So yeah, definitely important to share your interests and ask those questions. So what's kind of your favorite part about working in event marketing?
Oh, I mean, I love the events industry, and the great I think the thing about the marketing side is that you get to see all the work that everyone else, but you get to see the whole project as a whole. So that would be hands down for me the best part of it. But also you get to see all the work that everyone else puts into it, because most of the time with the marketing side, hopefully you're brought in early enough that you're part of the kind of ideation stage. You're working with the creative team on what is being developed, but then you're also there when it's live and happening, and post-event you're still working on it because there's things to do. And I don't think there's really many roles that actually get the full like the whole period, and I love that. And also I love knowing more than maybe I need to. That sounds a bit weird, but what I mean by that is context is everything for me.
You like to know the ins and outs of it all.
Yeah. And so on a project, I want to know what's happening. And the great thing is with marketing, you can be like, well, I need to know. And they're like, why do you need to come to this meeting? I need to know what's happening in that little room on the side in case anyone asks, because at some point we may have to tell people. So I think that's the main part that I like about it. And seeing the work, I mean, really getting to see what people produce is by far the talent that people have that I definitely don't is fantastic.
No, like you say, picking your strengths and utilising them, definitely worth doing. So you kind of have touched about it, but what does a typical day look like in your job role?
So it really varies, and it hasn't changed at all in lockdown, because other than the events changing from being a physical event to being online, obviously everything that you're marketing is the same. That's never really changed. But my job role, because I'm working for clients, some of the projects I'll just be doing some strategy work around what we need to do. So whether or not I worked on a project the other month in which we were creating the collective I wasn't doing this, but the team were creating a digital, like an online game to do with a tech client, and the work that I was doing was building the strategy around how do we then reach the target audience they're looking for, and build out their kind of marketing for that. But they are the type of client where you're getting, I think, 2 or 3 posts tops to be able to talk about it. So it's a very limited field. Whereas one of the other clients I work for, which is one of the biggest events I work on, which is Cisco Live Europe, that I look after the strategy and everything, but also then every post, so the copywriting, getting the design assets created, through to the community management of like replying back to any questions, and on site when the event is live. I have quite a big team, there's about 10 of us doing community management, and then also getting all the content, as you can imagine, content creation for Instagram that's happening when we're there, but also like stuff like I have to upload all of the videos to YouTube the same day that it's happening, and then also replying back to everyone, and so it really does vary based on the clients, but I think the fundamental part of marketing is most of the time you do deal with everything, and then sometimes the elements that you're doing quite boring or very bitty. Like I was today and yesterday I've been working on a online event of which I've been a community moderator, and I've just been deleting comments and reading. My favorite part of this is, again, it's a tech event, so there's a lot of developers, and they're not allowed to post links, any links, not allowed to do, so we'd have to delete them. And then this guy was talking to his colleague, and then obviously it gets deleted straight away, and he goes, "Oh, why does this keep happening? Oh, it must be a bot. I bet you it's a bot. It's not going to be an actual person reading this conversation." And then there's like five of us across Europe. We were all like, "No, we are reading every single post that comes in." So sometimes it's fun and really enjoyable, and then sometimes it's quite boring, and it's screenshots and deleting comments.
So, you've got to do what you've got to do on event days. Yeah. It's same with whatever your role is.
Yeah.
So what are kind of the key skills required for your job role? Like you say, you didn't necessarily train for it or anything like that, but is there any kind of training you would recommend, or just general skills you think you would need?
I think if you're interested in marketing, I think the biggest thing would be to look into doing like copywriting course or understanding copywriting. Now I'm not very good at it, and again have not done any training in it, but I struggle with, and I think it's one of the hardest parts, is writing interesting copy for a tweet about an event that you may be talking about for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, and at a certain point you're like, I'm really running out of different ways to say register for this event without saying register for this event. And because I work a lot with B2B clients, so business to business, the level of creativity can sometimes be quite limited. Yes, you could have amazing ideas, but the clients just aren't going to, they're not going to be on TikTok. They're not going to want to try different things. And so sometimes it is just loads of tweets and LinkedIn messages. And I think copywriting is the thing that is the most helpful. And I'm lucky to work with people who kind of work on copywriting, and they give some really good advice that make it just a little bit easier to say something other than register for this event. But I don't think with marketing that you need a huge amount of experience. And I also think even there's a difference between having your own account and I suppose your own personal brand and using kind of social media to market it versus doing it for clients. But if you are doing things like, even if it's, I'm boldly assuming that quite a few people might be at university, so apologies if this doesn't quite help.
Yeah, we're okay. I think there were quite a few.
But like if you're part of like your event society and you take on maybe doing some of the social work for that, or even just, I mean, Event Grads is a great example where they have everyone kind of, you can help them and work with them and with their marketing as well. Even doing things like that will really help you kind of bolster out, I suppose, a bit of a portfolio, but you don't really need it. I think if you can show that you have an interest and you explore stuff. I mean, I was very dubious about Clubhouse and I still am, but I was on it, and and you have to, I think keeping up to date with stuff is a really beneficial thing. But copyright, actual skills, copywriting, and then just an interest in it.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think it is one of those, you will have all these ideas you want to do, but then you remember like, oh, this isn't my life, this isn't my job.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of stick to those rules and regulations of that. But having, like say, having the interest and understanding what the opportunities could be is really important.
Yeah, because then you can challenge people as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and do some crazy things on TikTok. They will buy into it. You have to phrase
There's
it right.
always one, especially tech companies that are trying to get out there and be a little edgier, and they're the ones that want your ideas.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to anybody kind of wanting to work in this industry, like say, other than kind of the skills there, but approaches or different aspects?
I think just be open to exploring stuff and just keep on the nose of what's going on out there. I can share if you're interested, but there's a couple of newsletters that I get for like one of them's like a B2B marketing newsletter, and then there's another one which I don't read every week, but it's I was going to say it's pages long. I don't know how long an email, if you can ever say if it's pages and pages, but that has like this guy, he's called Matt something. This is not great, is it? I'll send you the links if you're interested. But he lists out all of the new stuff happening with brands. So, it might be the stuff like obviously Twitter are doing their Twitter Spaces, which is like the audio aspect of Clubhouse. And I, to be honest, even just reading those emails, it's not like you have to be on them all. But if you get these, then I go into work and people are like, oh, you know loads of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I do. No, I just read someone else's email that told me all of this information. But yeah, a real interest and just keeping up to date with it will set you aside in a way that, that's, I think, all you really need to start with.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of final two questions we've got here is, what's been the most difficult part of your career so far?
So I struggled with this one because I think sometimes, my instant reaction was, well, this last year has been really difficult.
Yeah.
And then but obviously that's the same, I think, obviously for everyone. But there's some distinct moments for me. One of them, would this be the most difficult part? I think there's imposter syndrome is a thing I think everyone suffers with. That's a huge one that continues to plague me wherever I go. But before I got my role as digital producer, I can't remember how long ago this was. I think it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I was in a support capacity for, okay, hold on, the context of this I should probably give. So one of the clients I work for, Cisco Live Europe, I lead on all of that marketing work. But I only got that promotion 3 or 4 years ago. And the 2 years prior to that, I was, I suppose, a marketing assistant. I can't remember what the job title was. Yeah. And I assisted my colleague at the time who was delivering the work. And I really struggled during that time period because it was quite apparent that he wasn't as active or doing as much as I felt he should be. But also I realized, I was like, why do I have to go through him to get this stuff done? Because actually I'm doing most of it. Yes, there's an area that I don't have a huge amount of experience in. But I was like, I'm doing it anyway. And I think it was, I suppose, going through that experience of advocating for myself, pushing forward that there was something that needed to change, that I was more than capable of doing the job. And I do think I know that this question is not like a specific moment in time, but I always think about that moment was really quite tough. And actually I hated it. I hated going through the whole process of saying to people, look, this isn't working. But also I would be better at it. But it also taught me a lot in that moment. And so that's just a really long way of saying his is one moment.
No, I completely get you. It is that realization sometimes that I think it can go either way, of admitting that you need help and you need to ask for it, or going the other way, like you say, of being, actually that person could probably need help and I am doing a better job, so need to push for that. So yeah, I completely agree. I think it is one of those situations that most people will find themselves in at some point, and it's then how you deal with it that can kind of make or break it as well. So yeah, definitely. kind of following that then, final question from me is, what is your career highlight?
It is the exact same one,
Yeah.
but it was, for me, it was getting the job to kind of lead on, or the promotion to lead on the marketing stuff. And because I still don't think I am able to do it, but that's where the imposter syndrome sits in. But it's my favorite project to work on, even though I spend all of my time talking to people about technology that I do not understand, and having to try and decipher whether something someone is saying is offensive or a weird joke that developers have. And I've learned that a lot of the time it's a joke.
Real difficult. I work in tech events as well, and there's a lot of words that go straight over my head, and also like, I don't understand if this is funny or not.
But yeah, that is my career highlight. Both the moment of my career that I don't ever want to have to go back through again, but also the best part of it.
Yeah, I think that is often kind of the case for some people. Like the lowest is then what you then did about it kind of led to the opportunities you then get. So I think that kind of lands really well. So yeah, that's kind of all the questions I had for you, but we've got some coming in already, which is wonderful. So if you do think of anything, just jot it in the chat and we'll get to it. So first question from Hannah is, would you say having an event management degree is enough to break into the event marketing world? Or do you think they'd look for more kind of marketing based experience or degrees? I think marketing roles are kind of coming up more and more often. So
yeah,
it could be a bit more competitive, I guess.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want to do. So if you are wanting to do event marketing, yes, an events degree, you have to know how the event's planned to be able to market it. So I would say categorically you're in the best place by doing that. But if you were more interested in maybe a more general or generic kind of marketing course, then potentially they may look for different experience. But I also think, I mean, Katie, I don't know if it's come up in the other conversations, but like, because most people do tend to fall into the events industry, I do think that just having that interest and a different background will help you, in the best.
Completely agree. I think the events industry is, like you say, a lot of kind of long-standing people in the industry. They didn't have events degrees, so nobody kind of in the start had that anyway. So it's clear that you don't need the degree to get there, but also of course then having it is a wonderful help and kind of gives you that step ahead. But I think marketing wise, there's kind of the two sides to it, especially event marketing. Like say, you need to know the event side to be able to market it, and then you need to know the marketing side as well to be able to market it. So
Yeah. And I think one of the personally, if I was in like taking someone on, I think if they had an events degree, I would in many ways feel slightly better for it, because it is about marketing in the space of the events industry, around an event, and that is quite different to just doing, because you can do some great social media work, but it doesn't quite fit with the fact that you're doing this for one event that's only going to be around for 2 days or something. And so I think if you've got your degree, then if you just make sure that you have some portfolio of some work that you've done, and it doesn't have to be for an events company or in the event space, then I think you're set. You'd be great.
I think kind of a lot of event roles, whether they're events specific or marketing and whatever it may be, I know my company especially, I think I'm the only one in the company. So I work for an events company, and I think I'm the only one with an events degree. Everybody kind of has degrees from different backgrounds, but it's just the interest and your ambition to kind of get there, and what you've done alongside that to get there as well, that kind of can push you forward with that.
Yeah.
Kind of tying in from what you just said there as well. So another question was, I've heard people also, sorry, it's not a silly question. There's no such thing as a silly question. I've heard people mention portfolios in an art sense, but would you say the marketing side of portfolio is more down to the, like kind of a similar route to an art portfolio, or just evidence of showing the work you've done?
I would say it's evidence of work. So, and maybe portfolio is the wrong term to use.
I think it can be kind of a broad sense of the term as well.
Because I just think if someone says to me, oh yeah, I've got this great idea for a marketing thing, I love TikTok, it's great, which it is. But there's a part of me, if I can see that something that you have written copy, or whether it's for yourself or like, I think it's that evidence of work. It's not just about saying you can do something, it's showing it. So I think when I talk about the portfolio side, it's that aspect of being able to back it up a bit. And I'm not saying you need to create a beautiful document and come up and say, here's some tweets I've written, although, you know, you could print them out and do it, because I definitely screenshot some of the ones that are really good to be like, well, I might need this one day. But I think it sparks that confidence. And I think as well, it's quite a difficult, well, not a difficult job to interview, but I imagine that in conversations, being able to then share, here's some of the work I've actually done, or get it up on your phone and say, oh, I can show you, you know, here's something done. That's kind of what I mean, having it in your back pocket.
Yeah, definitely. I think something kind of, I know it comes up with kind of event related stuff a lot, but things just like having an online portfolio, using like your Instagram account as your portfolio. So yeah, have your personal ones, share your selfies, but then have your kind of work committed ones, such as EM, for example, for me is what I say my work account. And I try to create content that's of interest for people who follow it. And I know there's a lot of kind of event students and graduates that have their like events accounts of just their experiences, the events they've worked on, or questions like related to the industry and stuff like that. So it's definitely something you can then work on just as it doesn't matter how many kind of followers you've got, or it's just showing then you have a content plan, or you can create that kind of thing as well. And it's just backing yourself up. And like you say, giving yourself experience without having a job experience type thing as well.
And I also think it could be helpful, say you're not able to find any opportunities, like work opportunities, work experience. You can tell I spent all day not talking to people. I think I'm only just slightly getting into the swing of this. Being behind a screen typing. But like, if you can't find the chance to maybe trial stuff out, this might not be down to everyone's cup of tea, but you could come up with a fake campaign. Like you could do not a fake version, but you could be like, this is what I do, or this is what this is how I would create I refer to them as content banks, but it's like where I put all the copy in, or a monthly calendar. If you have a website or you want to put stuff out there, then you can show that you know how you'd start working. Even if you haven't been able to find the experience. Because the great thing about marketing, I suppose that is what's so great about it, is you don't actually need to have years of experience. I mean, I think I saw a job ad that once said something like, oh, we need, this for like it was some top of head of marketing or social, and they were like, you need to have 15-20 years of experience. And I was like, I don't know how that's possible, considering it was like 2007 is like when YouTube went out, you know, like, I'm sorry, unless I'm really terrible with maths, and I might be, I'm like, I don't think 20 years in a space that hasn't been around for that long is possible.
It's a job that must have changed so much and so quickly that, yeah, like you say, you can definitely create your own experience as well. And portfolio wise, it is something that can be done easily, such as the EM website, for example, is just a Google site. It's all free, it's all very, very easy to use, because I'm not great at that stuff. But then things like Canva and tools like that are all free, that you can then just use to utilize yourself and make those opportunities for yourself. Another question is it more common for people to work freelance in this area?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it is. I would say yes, because all of the people that I bring into my team are freelance. But that's because in general as well with the events industry, because it's it does fluctuate. Obviously, an event, you need a lot more people, and then when the event's not on, there isn't anything happening. So it can be. I also think what's great about marketing is that you could do a whole range of different stuff for different clients if you're so inclined, and freelance really helps you to be able to do that. But I think there are opportunities. But I do think some of the roles that maybe exist that maybe have events in the title around the marketing side may be more geared towards like marketing for an events company, so their own marketing as opposed to for
a specific event.
Yeah. So yeah, I was trying to think how many times can I use events and marketing in one little bubble? But yeah, so I think it probably is a bit more freelance based, but they do exist. I mean, these roles are out there, but I think they're quite hard to find and they're hidden. Such as, I'm down as a digital producer and it's a hidden title, and that's stupid and bizarre, but I think it's not as clear cut. I think the ones that you can find when you're doing a job hunt will probably be more marketing for a company that might be in the event space, which is why I suppose networking or having conversations with people, I don't just mean having to reach out and say I'm interested in the job, but just talking to people, you should hopefully be able to find them a little bit easily.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of kind of area, like events, marketing, kind of all of that in general. There is a lot of space for freelance work, and it's great. And I think kind of a lot of people want to go into that, but also consider gaining your experience first to then take that route as well. And you can't kind of, if you're doing it freelance, there's a lot of chance that you're doing it on your own without kind of that support system as well. So I think it's good to consider both ways. Like say it has a lot of flexibility, but then it's just creating that background for yourself and that network for yourself to be able to be in a good position freelance wise.
Yeah.
Perfect. So another question from Daisy is, on a work placement, one of my tasks was to post on Twitter to drum up interest. I found it really difficult to come up with things to say. Do you have any advice in how to kind of overcome this?
Oh, I mean, I feel the pain.
I agree. I have to do marketing for my company and it's not something I'm very good at.
And I wouldn't say I'm very good at it either. No, it's tough. It is really tough. I think I would say that the best thing you can ever do with any type of marketing, and obviously I suppose because maybe it's worth getting a bit of context on what type of things you were having to drum up interest for. So was it for them as a company or a particular event? Or...
Daisy, jump on if you want. Just turn your mic on.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
It was for an event. So basically what I was doing was a bit of everything over 3 events leading up to one big event. So it was kind of like, at the time when I was supposed to be posting on Twitter, it was kind of an event we were trying to get sponsors for the main event.
Okay, yeah.
So we put on kind of like a little snapshot of what they would experience at the main big event, and I was taking pictures and posting about that. So the main thing was to get interest for the main big event that was coming later. Yeah. But I really didn't know what to say, so I just took pictures and posted pictures because
it's so hard, because I think the thing that people do with marketing is and I know this because clients have said it, they're like, oh, it's not a big thing, it's fine, it's easy, we need to get, as you say, we need to get interest for this big event. And then you're like, well, hold on, what do you actually need? Is it you want people to register? Great. Well, I can hands down categorically tell you that if you post a tweet, no one's going to do anything with that. And I don't mean this in a simplistic form, and I'm not saying that social is so important, but one post or multiple posts is not going to make someone do something. It has to be coupled together in a bigger group. And the problem, I'm not going to go into like the big element because I could talk about this for hours and days. But I think that one of the things I found is creating, I call it, well, I don't know if this is the actual term, but I refer to them as content like buckets or topics that you want to kind of touch upon. So if you're needing to promote an interest for a big event, you were right in some of the stuff you were saying there, but like obviously, okay, well, what's the big event actually going to be doing is something to talk about. But then I suppose, yeah, I'm wondering what type of content buckets I'd use there. Well, when I promote an event, we talk about what's going to be taking place, the types of speakers, and maybe the work that we're already doing behind the scenes, which is really difficult when everything's online, I can tell you that. Here's people at their computer. That's not a great picture. But finding buckets that you could maybe go with can be helpful. But in all honesty, it's really difficult because there's no like one answer of this is how to do it. It's so unique to each thing that you're having to do. But also sometimes you just have a massive gap, like, and it could be months. I mean, one of the events I work on, we're promoting it 6 months out. I mean, no one cares. The first 4 or 5 months, no one cares. And I've got to fill out content on a almost daily basis because that's what the client wants. It's not the right way to do it, but you know, the client asks for every day. So there's not, yeah, I think it's always maybe having, oh, the other one that we do, this is a cheat, is whatever that event is about, find days, fun days. I think that you can, if you just type into Google like fun days, that would be things like, oh, it's, you know, May the 4th, when everyone does Star Wars jokes. And if you can tie it to the event that you're doing, tech is great because Star Wars, apparently everyone just make a bold assumption that anyone who works in tech likes Star Wars. And then we just create content around that as well. So if you can shoe in things like that, that just helps alleviate the pressure of, as I was saying earlier, about how many times can you say register for this event without saying register for this event, is things like that. So those content buckets can help, but yeah, I'm afraid there's not much else.
Like you say, I think it is a different, I guess, case by case situation, and similar for my events, we have to try and find sponsors and stuff like that, and it's finding out what's important to the sponsor and what they want to achieve, and try and figure it out from there, I guess. But it is one of them that's not always just a nice plain route, unfortunately. So we have a question from Bethany. She did apologise for it being long, so hold up with me. Do you have any advice for advocating for yourself and making your voice heard? So Bethany said she's working a marketing events officer on the volunteer committee for a local Amdram theatre company. And I've created a brand pack for social media and worked really hard on it. The chairman often puts ideas forward, which is great, but it's a nightmare if I disagree, and it often ends up being his way or no way. I don't want to cause friction in the committee, but I also want, I am in this role as the person with the most experience, so I want to be able to assert my voice and stay professional, if that makes sense. So basically, how do you make your voice heard if you're in that role for your kind of talent in that role, and somebody who kind of is just above you with regardless of the role?
Yeah, I mean, I relate to this question so much, and it's not too long at all, because so
okay, content, and that's all we need.
Yes, like context, and this is great. We've got all the it's really tough. And actually, so I face this quite a lot, and I think anyone who works in marketing, that's maybe a bold thing, but I think it's very difficult in a marketing or social role for people to take you seriously, because they just think a lot of the time that, it's just social. Oh, everyone does it, you know. And there is that element, especially with people of a slightly older generation. But like, I have worked in, I mean, I've had my role for quite a while now, and I still face that struggle of trying to, I suppose, clearly articulate why I'm saying this, or the reason behind it. And I have learned that the best way to do it is with data, with information. And it doesn't have to be massive amounts, but it's like when they say, I'm just going to make a bold assumption that this could be something that would happen, but say you're like, okay, we're gonna talk about this event, we've got this beautiful, and I love the fact you come up with a brand pack, it's fantastic. Well, we're promoting it, we're going to be on Instagram because that's where people are target. I don't know what this Amdram performance is, but we're going to go on Instagram this particular reason. And they're like, oh no, but we want to post it on Facebook. And you're like, no one's really on there, or that doesn't make sense. If you can back it up with a bit of information, such as stats like, well, the main people we're targeting are 16 to 25 and they're not on, and have that data at hand, people pay attention to that. But I also think at a certain point, you could just say, well, but then you don't want to cause friction. At some point you can say, I understand that your idea, it's a nice idea, but it's just not feasible in the time we have. Or, okay, I can do that, but we're going to have to drop something else. Sometimes it could be that's a way to do it as well, is to kind of give a package of, oh, you want to do this, and you're like, that's a shit idea, without saying it's a shit idea. So then you're like, okay, but we've talked about these other 3 things, which is the most important for you, and put that pressure back on them. And also, sometimes there is a point where there's fights that are worth having, or battles that are worth committing to, and others where you go, yeah, it's not going to be great, or it's not going to be exactly what you wanted the marketing to be, but who cares? I mean, I have this with clients where sometimes it's like, things like, we don't need to be posting every day, and they're like, no, I want it out, it's looking like we don't have anything there, and you're like, no one cares. And so rather than have that fight, I'm like, okay, fine, you want content every day, that's what you'll get. Is it going to do anything? No, but
it can also help prove your point if they, like you say, if they want it that way, do it their way, and then show them they were wrong afterwards, rather than telling them from the start like, that's a terrible idea. Because then they'll always be like, oh well, if we did it this way it could have worked, when you just still know it wouldn't have worked. So I think kind of, like say, putting it back on them and making them question it, and like kind of see it how you're seeing it as well. It is always a horrible situation though. You never want, like say, you never want to be that person, but sometimes you're right to be that person.
And also, no one wants an argument. But sometimes it's like, look, you're just wrong.
Just accept it and move on. So another question is, would you have any advice for stepping out as freelance, kind of from the things you're looking for when you're in people when they join your team?
Okay, hold on, let me so when we say advice for stepping out as freelance, as in how you can like have the best skills for doing a job, or I don't know.
I'm not sure who's there. Can I see you?
Oh, she might. No.
Oh no, she is here. Roxanne, you can jump on if you want, or just put it in the chat. It's up to you.
Sorry, again, as I said, I like context, so I go back with more questions.
Hi.
Do you know what? It might have been a bit of a too in-depth thing, and I know people sometimes don't like to talk about wages and things like that, but just generally thinking, the kind of hours that you expect from your freelancers to contribute to the role, maybe even help for how people normally negotiate expected fees for working on certain events and things.
That's a good question. So hours, it varies on the projects, but it's the same, I think, if you were doing an event in person, if you're working on an event, how the hours are never like your normal day. I don't know how at work, I think a day is classed as 7.5 hours, but on site, I mean, out the window, it's like 7.5 hours. Like, sorry, that's nothing. So the hours ones is quite difficult. When the freelancers that I work with, they tend to give like more, a day rate, basically, work to a day rate, but it's quite difficult with social. I prefer to work with freelancers who are agreeing to, I need to give, clients pay us for a certain number of hours, and so I prefer working with freelancers if I know when they're online and I can get their work. I don't mind how they split that up. But like there's set meetings that I'd maybe have. So say we were working on an event and they were down to work 3 days, but I don't mind how they split that like across for their week. So I think if you can go in with a rough idea of what you're willing to commit to, and know that, I think on a freelance basis, you probably do have to deal with when clients have meetings and fitting that in and around how you work. But the expectation that I put onto freelancers is quite minimal. I think it's, there's a certain amount of hours that I've got them for, and there's a certain amount, this is not very helpful, the more I'm talking, the less certain I am about what I'm saying. Unfortunately, I think maybe the point with this is it so depends on the actual work to give a real answer. But I think if you're wanting to go out as a freelancer, go in with day rates and stick with that, because you can't, if someone says to you, I need some tweets, it's 2 hours, it's not 2 hours. And I know I'm using just kind of social as the example here, but like, it takes a lot of time. You have to do a lot of research to understand what you're promoting, and so you should always go in, I think, a day over what it is, because of the research, and you're writing stuff most of the time, or you're even designing it. And I think day rates are the way to go. Don't do it by hours for pay. And I think that's maybe all I can answer for this, because I've established I'm not great.
No, I think like Roxanne was saying, it's one of those areas with freelance work, especially when you're starting out, like, how much do I charge? How do I go about it? There's so many varying approaches, and something I've never worked with freelancers, and it's actually something I've decided I think I want to do at some point as well. So now I'm like, right, how do I start to think about that? And like you say, I think, how you approach it yourself, and to be competitive but also not ridiculous, and put yourself in the right market. It's a difficult kind of standpoint to find.
Yeah, and I don't know what people charge. Like, and I think that's the difficult part here, is I think with more experience, like, if the more experience you have, the more you're able to go in at those higher day rates. But I mean, being honest, I think we pay the freelancers that I work with, I mean, they have high day rates. They get paid a lot more than I do. And they can justify it, because it is a lot of work. But I mean, my only advice on this, because I've never worked as a freelancer, is do not undersell yourself. So if, always think about the additional stuff that comes with the work. And I think and I would apply this, I think, if you were doing any freelance, but especially with marketing, is you do need to delve into who that client is and what you're having to do, and the best channels, and where their audience is. And that's a lot of front end work as well. And I think clients sometimes miss that as being consideration. They're like, well, we just need, a strategy, content strategy, that's it, the ideas. But you've got to then understand a lot more to deliver that singular piece of work. So
it's a lot more than it looks like on paper to them, essentially.
Yeah. And actually, that's another point, is that in other jobs, other roles, I think you have a lot more to show for what you give. And marketing is really, really hard to show. Well, as we were talking earlier about, like, how do you get people interested in an event? Well, it's really hard, because you can't actually ever say that this person, like, if I saw a tweet, I probably didn't go and buy tickets to that event I saw the tweet on because I saw that message. That might just remind me, oh yeah, I saw that the other day, and I'll go to the website. But I'm not going to buy the ticket straight away, probably. And so you can't ever tie it to one person. And so it's really difficult to show the value that you have. So that's why you should go in front end being like, I know it takes more time, and don't know if that's helped at all, actually.
No, I think that was helpful. Okay, where are we at? Do you have any tips or advice for looking for jobs in other locations that you aren't based in and are happy to kind of relocate to? So, for example, I'm looking at London, Reading and Manchester, but I'm not sure how to approach finding jobs somewhere I'm not based.
Oh, I mean, you're fine, because everyone's not based where they say they are currently.
Very true. Nobody is in central London.
No. I would say, even though things are starting to open up, I mean, I think for jobs, if you're wanting to work and you're obviously not in London or Manchester or Reading, you go about applying for them the same way. And then when it comes to an interview point, you just say, oh, could we do it online?
100%.
And do it that way.
Had to do that recently. It's not going to come as a big shock to them anymore. They're all going to have Zoom now. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know really anyone who's actually in the office, like, properly, apart from if they want to be. So I think there really isn't a huge difference in it. And I think as well, if you're looking for, especially if you're looking for kind of more marketing roles anyway, you might not even need, I mean, you might want to relocate, which would be great, but you might, like, you can do a lot of it at home on your own, working from home, so that, which is quite nice, and I think a lot of people will have realized that in the last year. So that might help you as well, is I don't think there'll be that same pressure of you need to be based in London when applying for, or wherever, to get the job, because actually a lot of people have moved out.
No, completely agree. I relocated from Manchester to London. I didn't have, like, I got the job, that's why I did it. I didn't kind of go looking for it, but I think it's a big move for anybody, regardless of where you're going. So just be open-minded. I think, like you say, approach the job situation as you would for any job, and I think things are way more flexible at the minute. But the actual moving and relocating part, be so open and so flexible and kind of willing to try new things and go to new places as well. If you're looking to relocate, you're clearly okay with that as well. So yeah, good luck.
I've just reread the end of it about not sure how to approach finding jobs where you're not based. LinkedIn / online, the internet is, which, okay, that's not very helpful. It's a big place, but if you just go on, I think LinkedIn is great for job. I mean, it has been a while since I've done a job hunt, so I may not be the best for it. But if you go in on LinkedIn, what's the other one? Total Jobs, places like that, and just do it based on, I suppose, what you're interested in, rather than location, then you should be able to find more stuff that's available. But yeah, LinkedIn
is definitely my go-to. There's so much on there at the minute, and also find kind of the companies you like and the ones you want to work for, follow them and make sure you're kind of active on their pages. See if they've got like a recruitment HR person, they're probably going to be the person posting about the job applications first as well. So it's always just good to get them up on your feed rather than going to search for them too.
Yeah.
If it's events jobs, event grads are very good for stuff like that. I try to post things in EM when I see them, but I'm not very actively doing that. But yeah, there's definitely loads of different places, especially on LinkedIn, to do so. How often would you recommend posting content on socials for any kind of client or brand?
This is, you may have thought that you were asking a very simple question, but that's not the case. And so the problem with this as a question is, and I know I keep saying about context and going back and firing a bunch of more questions, but the problem is you first have to establish, what's the objective of the marketing that you're doing. So that could be, clients will often tell you, oh, it's to get, we're promoting an event, a client will often be like, oh, it's to get people to the event to buy tickets. Well, that's actually not the marketing objective, that's just a general objective. The marketing objective might be more clear, that you want more people, it's more brand awareness, and therefore you want to increase the number of followers. So that then indicates the type of content you'd be creating, and equally how often you'd be posting. And I mean, and then there's a whole bunch of more questions around it. It's like, where is the audience that you're looking for? What social channels are they on? Because that's then going to have an impact of how often, what time of day. Although I would actually say that time of day when you post is not really a natural thing. People put a lot of pressure behind it, but it doesn't work because social feeds are not in chronological order anymore, so it actually doesn't really matter.
LinkedIn's the worst. I see posts from like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, don't post on LinkedIn if you're doing something that's really timely and needs to be promoted in 2 days' time. You do that a week out. So it really varies. And I think I would say, I think it's the same thing as you have to be consistent. So there needs to be a level of consistency. And that can vary from once a week to every 2 weeks, depending on the channel. Like, you know, Twitter, you can probably get away with it not being as active, but equally you could be super active on Twitter because of the way that feed works. So I don't have a recommendation, only because it would really vary depending on what it is you're having to do and the aim that you're going in for. But I would say that there has to be a consistency behind it. So you have to, and I think also, depending on if you even have things to say, don't make your life harder and say you need to post every day. It's like, just limit it to once a week. if you have something?
I think your answer there kind of is important. Like you say, there is no answer. It's the case of not having that plan and not sticking to that set plan that is then going to help your marketing campaign along the way, with it being, without it being so rigid and we're going to post at this time every day. That's not what people want. It just then kind of gets missed. So I mean, deciding on different angles, different viewpoints and stuff like that to go about is more important than deciding what you post is kind of more important than how often you're posting it.
Yeah, because I think there was a thing, you might have seen it, or you might not have, I don't know how many. I follow a lot of people on Instagram who talk about marketing, or small businesses or influencers, and then they keep, you know, I saw a whole bunch about how Instagram had said how often you should be posting and what type of things you should be posting to be seen the most in the feed. And it was something bonkers, like posting 3 times across a week in feed, so a normal post. It was multiple times a day in stories. It was 2 or 3 reels a week. It was also an IGTV in that time to make the most of it. And this is, and I'm quite a pessimistic user of social media. I think that there is a lot of guff out there that will tell you need to be doing it all the time. And it's not true. It's just this, I mean, okay, you might get seen more, but it really doesn't have that much of an impact. If the content is good and it's well done, you can and ideally from a social perspective or any marketing plan, if it's really strong content, find a way to utilize that multiple times and it will get seen by the right type of people. You don't need to focus so much on every day doing something. Just there has to be some consistency to your posting. I know it's the same for, like, a great example of this is like newsletters. You know, you don't want a load of newsletters in your inbox because no one will read them. So you have to have that level of consistency, but people will read it. And if it's every 6 months, people are still going to, you know, that in some ways that's better than doing it every month, because people are like, oh yeah, this has popped up, I'm going to read this. So yeah, it's there's a really tough one.
It's never ever a straightforward answer. But no, I think, I completely agree. You've all got those people on Instagram that post so much and you're just like tap, 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 going through it all and not paying attention. So finding the happy medium, I think, is the marketing's problem, and that's what we have to work around. I think we have kind of one final question, then a couple of comments of, can you give some suggestions about what kind of skills are significant to show when, as a graduate student, apply for a role in the event industry?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, that was like, yeah.
You didn't sound too sure.
I think it's a tough one here. Yeah. I think it's changed a lot. I think digital capabilities are a must-have now, and by that I mean, you know, there's a lot to be said for, as you guys have been continue to be studying and dealing with online lectures, that in itself is a huge amount of experience working with how digital events, online events are delivered. It might be a different platform, but you're still using something, and even though you may have not planned the lessons, you're still using these platforms and know how they work. So I think it's pulling out digital skills, and I think social, if you use it, and even just for yourself, is a strong one to pull out. But I think it's the digital ones for me that are the most prevalent, and you can do that quite easily even if you don't have a load of kind of, like, I suppose, experience, but you do have experience because you're using it all the time. So it's finding a way to say it, or to back up your knowledge, because you have a knowledge and understanding already. So yeah, that would be mine.
Yeah, I think I said kind of something similar in my session as well, that as an event manager, I've been in my role for 5 years. I've never done a virtual event before, and I can tell you a lot of other event managers hadn't done a virtual event before either. the only way I've learned how to do so is watching, taking part of like the virtual platform demos that they actually put on. That's how we've all learned, and you all have the same resources to be able to do so. It's not kind of come with experience or anything like that. It has just been a kind of new process for everybody. So if you can show that you're even just attending events across different platforms, most of them like Hopin and Excel events and stuff like that have their virtual demos that you can just sign up to, and it's like a big group session that they have like once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it may be. So yeah, go about utilizing your time and finding your own ways to kind of, like say, make that experience for yourself.
And I think I would say that a good thing that you could do is, and I'm a big advocate of this anyway, but like the great thing about LinkedIn is anyone can write a piece that they, you know, that you put up on your own LinkedIn. And I think writing about your experiences of the stuff that you've seen shows, you know, others in the industry that you are, you know, that you have this knowledge, that you're exploring it. And that also then, when we're talking about like portfolios or being able to back up your work, is something that you could link to, so people know that you've been talking about digital events, or and it doesn't have to be, as we're saying, that you've delivered one, but you've attended it, and we all know how Zoom works. So, you know, and I suppose also that's also a really good way to show maybe the stuff that you have explored and had an interest in, and the articles that you've read. You know, putting that information out is a way to advocate your own expertise, which I would highly recommend that you guys do.
Yeah, definitely. It's using your initiative and showing that you're keen and interested and kind of willing to put the work in without really having anything to put the work into as such. So yeah, I think that kind of definitely would help a lot. I hire kind of for my company, and most of the roles we take on are kind of graduates, not kind of intentionally, it's just the way it's gone. And it's just because of kind of just the enthusiasm and passion that graduates kind of show in those kind of initial stages where you're so wanting to get started, that it's kind of, we can teach you how to host an event, but we can't give you that passion, and we can't give you that kind of enthusiasm for it. So keep that in mind. It's not all about kind of the exact experience you've had. Well, I think that is all of the questions, and we've definitely run over time a little bit. But thank you very much, Caitlin. This has been really interesting, and discovered we have kind of very similar paths along the way. But yeah, thank you everyone. Some kind of lots of love in the channel there as well. But thank you very much. And the next session next week, I believe is, I forgot off the top of my head. This is terrible. Creating your own events company and managing an events company is the next session. So yeah, if anybody's interested, maybe freelance side or entrepreneur side, then it could be one for you as well.
That's better than the answers that I've given about attending to pretending to be a freelancer. I think that one will be really useful.
You'll find out no matter what role you're in, you will just make a lot of stuff up along the way. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.